The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Well, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio and Global Alert News. There's a lot of data that we need to get out, and sometimes not as easy as it might seem to work all day long at research and posts and maintaining websites, communications, trying to keep up on, again, the latest data that's breaking, and it's breaking everywhere, and trying to deal with new aspects on how to run an internet system like this. So thanks for everybody's patience. Have Doug Diamond with us today that's helping to run this system, and we'll get it down. Just takes a little bit of experience at this. We have Russ Tanner with us again from Global Skywatch, and we'll get to Q&A pretty quick. But this week, as with all recent weeks, it's hard to keep up with how fast things are breaking on the bigger picture front. And it's important to remember that everything is connected. So many things that don't seem to be related are, in fact, completely connected. And it's important that we all look at this to try to get a better perspective of the bigger picture. If we're looking at any given item or object through a very narrow lens, it's hard to tell what that item might be or what exactly we're looking at. But if we stand back and look without looking through a tunnel, we can see what we're looking at. And that's the case on the bigger picture right now. Events like the Iran nuclear deal, what a circus that is. The demonization of Iran from Western powers, specifically from the U.S. Let's look at a few statistical facts. And this is all related to climate engineering. For those who don't think it is, it absolutely is. Everything's related. As the biosphere implodes, and it is imploding for a lot of reasons, not just one, like a lot of people would like to think it's just climate engineering or it's just this or just that. The environmentalists community like to think it's just CO2. That's not true at all. And those in the anti-climate engineering movement, unfortunately, like to think it's just climate engineering. That's not true either. But all of it's related. Climate engineering is directly related to Iran in many ways, and other Middle Eastern countries, the whole world, and everything happening in it. So I want to look at for a minute statistical facts relating to Iran and what a threat they are to the U.S., or what a threat we're being told they are, I should say. Historically, in about the last 230 years, Iran has invaded exactly no one. Zero. And that approximate time frame, the United States has invaded and or occupied 70 countries. 70. Iran doesn't have bases all around the globe in other people's countries. The U.S. does. About 156 countries total. So it's important for people to understand what's the bigger picture, what's the agenda, what's going on. We haven't had the U.S. diplomats on the floor of the UN saying, Iran's droughting out our country with their weather modification programs. Iran's not doing that. But we have had Iranian leaders on the floor of the UN stating that of the NATO powers, our country's being droughted out. And we have statistical fact of the surrounding Middle Eastern countries all having been droughted out prior to destabilization. We're back to climate engineering, aren't we? It's related to everything. It's the covert weapon of choice for the power structure. So at this critical time, as the biosphere is starting to collapse, got a little background noise, Russ or Doug, I'm not sure what it is, you might want to mute that out. As the biosphere is starting to collapse, then we have a lot of drum beating going on from the power structure. And it really, truly a circus, an absolute circus. The Donald Trump parade of idiocracy, all the Democratic leaders, Republican leaders, These people are absolutely clowns that are bought, sold, and paid for. And I don't care whether it's Ron Paul or anybody else whose people think, oh, it's this guy's really the real deal. He's independent. He's going to do it. The power structure allows a certain amount of diversity to give the impression that there's some choice, there's some alternative to the system, to the status quo. It's an absolute lie. In fact, the last senator that truly had a character that would have mattered is Paul Wellstone, senator from Minnesota. He and his whole family were taken out 3 days before a critical vote in Congress, of which he was the critical voter, whole family. Electronics on the plane were disabled upon landing. His whole family was taken out with him. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. What happened when the world's foremost authority on deep sea drilling, Matt Simmons, was about to, or he actually did on CNN, he spoke out about the Macondo well in the Gulf of Mexico. He said things the power structure did not want him to say. Matt Simmons said the well is not capped, the seafloor is heaved, the well is still leaking, they're still spraying Corexit on the wellhead. He was dead the next night in his pool. Another coincidence, perhaps. That's how the power structure plays. And so for those that can't see past the demonization of Iran, just like they demonized Saddam Hussein, I'm not saying Saddam was a great guy. I'm not saying there's some not issues with Iran, the sort of religious fundamentalism. I'm not agreeing with any of that. But let's look at who's doing what. Who's actually doing what? And the American public falls for this again and again and again. Again, the Saddam Hussein saga, if you will. Here we have a despot dictator that was armed with chemical weapons by our government, chemical weapons used on innocent civilians. But what really caused the invasion? What really caused Saddam to be demonized and taken down? Because he wanted to disconnect from the dollar, and that couldn't be allowed. Because the Western power structure has to have, the U.S. government has to have the dollar as the global reserve currency, or they have to take out whoever's threatening not to use it. Same thing with Gaddafi. He was going to disconnect from the dollar. Same thing with Iran. Iran wanted to start their own oil trading bourse in about 2002 or 3, and that's when the demonization started. So it's important that we understand the full dynamics. And back to weather modification, again, the U.S. has to have the resources to keep putting these aircraft in the air, to keep flying them all over the planet, manipulating weather, droughting out countries, bringing them to their knees. Everything is connected. Everything. And it's up to us to know how the picture really fits together, or we can't convey a clear message to other people who are watching network TV that is so far from reality, so far from any semblance of the truth that it's staggering to even comprehend. I mean, one can only imagine if there was another intelligent life form. I shouldn't say another. I don't know that the human race qualifies in many aspects. If there was a truly intelligent life form watching us, I can't help but imagine that they would scratch their heads and wonder if there's any hope for our race. When at this time we have literally Earth's life support systems crashing, and all we watch on TV is, again, the theater of political idiocracy or commercials for the next Caribbean vacation. The analogy I've used before, and it's accurate, it's like the human race is in a car that just crashed through the guardrail, heading to the bottom of the canyon, and the occupants are arguing over what seat they get. So this is the track we're on at the moment. This is the path that the human race, and especially the United States of America, is on. And in regard to truth and people who buy these headlines, and again, this is back to Iran, back to the lies we're fed about Iran and other countries and other leaders, and the U.S. practices situational morality. If people understand that term, the rules they follow are dictated by their interests at the time. There's no true moral basis to any of it. It simply revolves around what the empire needs. So when we go back to, again, the countries that are being taken out, the sort of maneuvering that's going on right now, which is going to accelerate, because as the collapse of the biosphere can't be hidden, the gravity of what the human race can no longer be hidden, climate engineering can no longer be hidden, and our paradigm overturns. And we are perilously close to that point. It's important for people to understand that. It's important to look at data from many sources. And I look at data, as I've stated before, I look at data from all the major networks, Chinese news, Russian news. I look at all of it because I want to see who's telling who what and how that fits in the bigger picture. So, again, back to the escalating political events, the threats, the saber rattling, the positioning, the posturing, the military exercises, all of the above. How does that connect to biosphere collapse? How does that connect to climate engineering? Right now, we have an Arctic ice pack that's very close to collapse. And whoever doesn't believe that, I challenge you to actually investigate. Don't look at some ship, some headline with a ship that has been rammed into a bunch of a log-jammed pack of ice with an ocean behind it that's completely ice-free, and think that you have a clear picture of the world or the ice pack. You don't. You don't. Don't look at a headline and think you know what you're talking about. Look at data from the ground. So we have an ice pack that is very close to potential collapse, which means an ice-free Arctic in the summer, which is a cataclysmic event, because then the ice that reflected 90% of the sun's incoming thermal energy is lost, and now the ocean will absorb 90%. Now the methane that's already spewing out of the Arctic will increase radically. And this is even more important. You can't hide that. You can't. When ice collapses 100 years ahead of modeling, you can't hide that headline. And all of a sudden, people realize the degree to which they've been lied to, as if they shouldn't realize already. How many events do we need? From the Kennedy assassination, the lies that started the Vietnam War, to the 9/11 events, Saddam Hussein. Where would we stop? I mean, our world is built on lies. But the escalating, to tie all this in together, the escalating geopolitical tensions, which are being pushed by the Western power structure, which is ever more desperate, the increase in climate engineering, which is directly related to the collapse of the Arctic ice, not because they're fueling it, but because they're trying to hide the situation and making it worse at the same time. Again, as we saw the same situation in the Gulf of Mexico when they used the chemical Corexit to try to hide the oil, even though they made the situation exponentially worse, 52 times worse, according to environmental impact reports. So all this is connected. And what I would like to talk about, I want to get, Doug, your perspective. And again, everybody be honest about their perspective, because if there's a different perspective, let's talk about that and see which dots connect. So I don't want anybody to pull any punches when we start taking calls in a couple minutes. But please consider what you think, your opinion of some of the issues I just mentioned, and your perspective on that based on the information you've seen, and let's see how that fits into the bigger picture of climate engineering. That all these events are connected, everything's coming to a head, we face converging catastrophes, power structures more desperate than ever, biosphere is imploding. Your perception of how that fits together. Russ, from standpoint, and I'm not being fair to Russ and Doug, just for the listeners that are tuning in right now, I don't give them enough notice about what I'm going to talk about because I'm never ready. I have so many things on my plate right now. I spend 5 minutes preparing for my shows, literally, if that. So I apologize to Doug and to Russ that I never give them enough time to prepare for anything I'm going to talk about. They're flying blind into every show, which I pretty much am as well. There's so much to talk about. There's always something to bring up. I mean, there's so many things unfolding. But anyway, Russ, on this situation, you're in a different part of the country, different demographics perhaps in some senses. What's your perception of what you see on media with, for example, the demonization of Iran and that connecting to the biosphere imploding, which, of course, they want to make distractions to cover up a lot of things coming together. What's your take on that?
Well, so much of what we see is a distraction in media. We all, you know that, I know that. They're constantly distracting us from big issues. That's the pattern we see all the time. Distract us with these other issues, distract us with international issues that keep us away from, like you always say, the biosphere imploding. You know what scares me, Dane, is that this past week I've had people contact me who've been out in the sun. For hours, they've caught blisters, red rashes on their skin. That should be news. That should be frightening people.
It should be frightening people. I agree.
And you're not hearing about that. They're not talking about it. We have to talk to each other. We have to communicate directly with each other to see that in at least some of these areas, I'm not saying this is happening everywhere, but in at least some of these areas, there is something very, very wrong when people go out into the sun, get a couple hours of sunlight exposure, and come in with blisters on their skin in areas. And I'm not talking Florida. I'm talking about other areas of the United States. I'm not talking about, the tropics. So we're on the verge of something very big, Dane.
I would fully agree. And we see with metering on the UV, we see certain applications of spraying on certain days that many people are mistaking for a spray-free day because they don't see the horizon trails. We see the shorter, bright trails. The air eventually starts to look like a plasma. You have to look very close to see the ripples of haze in the atmosphere, but it's there. And on those days, which typically are high-pressure days, compressing air, radical heating, and the UV is off the scale. And those readings can change in a short time if that type of spraying stops. So are they able to create, even on a short-term basis, an even more extreme UV level because of what they're trying to do with, for example, extending the high-pressure zone, or increasing the strength of a high-pressure zone in order to accomplish the jet stream maneuvering they're trying to put in place. So the fact that they can hide UV levels that are from 10 to 12 times UVB, 10 to 12 times higher than we're being told, and the public is unaware of that, that's a very sad statement to society, that people ignore their own sense of feel, that they can feel this burning sun on their skin, their own sense of reason.
I confirm what you say, Dane. Many people contacted me. They feel it, Dane. Just like I back you up on that, Dane. People contact me. They feel the heat of the sunlight before. Something is different. Go ahead. People
that are aware and awake contact you. But you talk to other people who simply shrug it all off and assume that they're just getting older because that's what they were told. Or here in Northern California, because the bark is being fried off the trees, the leaves are falling off, the branches are dying. So Channel 7 ABC News pulls in an arborist who says, oh, don't worry, it's just the drought. How does the drought fry the bark off the south side of the trees? So it's always the attack from the power structure to find someone to lie about what's really happening. So again, back to the lies of Iran, Libya, Saddam, what's happening in the world, the Arctic ice, all these issues. So many people want to believe certain conclusions that are patently false, but they want to believe it. So they do. So they can go about their golf game or whatever else they're doing. So even though the UVB is from 1,000 to 1,200%, which is 10 to 12 times higher than we're being told, they would rather accept the lie. That alleviates them of any sense of responsibility, so they can simply go on about their lives. But we're at the point where the camel's back is breaking now. It's happening. So those that have chosen to take the cowardly route, the route of denial, the route of inaction, are soon going to have to face realities they tried to ignore. Doug, if you're there, I want to ask you a question. The UV issue where you're at, when the sun comes out, you've had a lot more rain than we've had. We don't have any rain in Northern California. We're heading into the 1-teens again. We're absolutely frying here. Are people in your area noticing the high UV?
I'm in Nashville. I would say that overall, I am not noticing people that are noticing what you're talking about. I mean, you might overhear a discussion of, wow, it's really hot out here on a really sunny day, But then usually by late afternoon, the spray planes are coming by and they're covering up whatever bit of sun there is out, and it starts cooling things off, and then all of a sudden it's like everybody just goes back to playing golf and watching football. So I would say that for the most part in the area that I am, I tell my friends that we live in a geoengineered bubble, because it seems like life is completely normal here with respect to the now we do have crazy weather, we have downpours and things like that, but people chalk it up to climate change. They just say, oh, well, it's just climate change. And it's just more insanity. They're not bothering to look up from their iPhones to see what the sky's really like. And I've got bumper stickers plastered all over my vehicle, and I like to go drive around just so people will stop behind me, and I see people taking their camera out and taking pictures so they can hopefully go back and follow up on that, because I think most people in this area at least do not know when they see lines in the sky that they're witnessing climate engineering, and they just think it's normal air traffic.
Because these changes have come on so slowly over such an extended period of time that people have simply become accustomed to skies that look completely unnatural. Now they're natural because it is the norm. Every commercial they see, and I don't think this is by accident, every movie they see, even kids' films, cartoons, in the background, you have geoengineering sprayed particulate trails. It's simply the norm. So we have a society that's been so conditioned that they accept the completely unnatural as natural because they're told it's natural by the quote-unquote experts. And on that note, the experts, that's something that so absolutely needs to be considered. How many subjects could we name that the so-called experts that we're supposed to pay attention to and believe have led us down a path of, at this point on this trajectory, certain mathematical extinction, certain, if we stay on this path? How are we to believe anything that academia says, which again is paid for by the central bankers? All roads lead back to the central bankers. We don't see the type of protests we saw in Vietnam. Why? Because the central bankers weren't about to allow that to happen again. They went off the gold standard, which means they could print whatever they want, which means they could completely purchase universities, literally, and they have purchased universities. So they dictate what reality is, and that's how most academicians are trained. The reality is not reality for them unless it's in a peer-reviewed or establishment-ordained manual that says it's reality. If they don't have that proof to them, it doesn't matter how glaring something is, like climate engineering, they simply will not acknowledge it. They won't. It's too challenging to their conditioning, and they can't break their conditioning. So we plunge toward a lifeless planet with the entire science community in total denial. And many of them know. I don't want to act like they don't know. They do know. I've talked to them behind the scenes. They're simply afraid to speak out. Others pretend not to know, or maybe their sense of fear is so great that it blocks it from their consciousness. It's hard to tell. Russ and Doug, if we have, if you can announce the call-in number, Doug, if you have that there, or Russ, and we can start taking questions. And I want people to share what the perception is of those around them on issues like the Iran propaganda that's going on right now and the sort of political theater that we see, all of which is part of how they help to hide climate engineering. We have the number, Russ or Doug?
The number, if you'd like to call in. Yep, I've got the number here. The number is 929-477-2297. That's 929-477-2297. And we'll have callers. I see a caller actually from LA. You ready to take these callers, Dane?
Yep, let's try.
Rick from LA, are you with us?
Yes. Is this Russ and Dane? Good evening.
Hello, Rick. How are you?
Good evening, Rick.
I'm disgusted, horrified by what's going on. And, of course, I've been watching the spraying since 1999. And apparently it has Agendas have been moved in. The type of spraying has changed over that period of time, more directed possibly towards engineering the weather. I do want to bring up something about the UV and the heat. Now, I live in San Fernando Valley, a suburb of Los Angeles. I grew up here. And when you go outside and it's 80 degrees and it's unbearable and your skin feels unbearable, I've tried to tell people around me, it is not the temperature you should be looking at. It is the UV. And I think that, as you say, Dane, and I just think that's highly unusual, where it's unbearable at 80 degrees. And 80 degrees is nothing.
It shouldn't be, but it is now. And the UV, again, it's killing everything at this point. It's killing plankton, killing forests. It's wreaking havoc on the globe right now. And how can you hide that from a population that has a sense of feel, as you just described? And that's how conditioned people are. That's how tuned out they are. And on the weather mod with the climate engineering, we have studies even from Stanford that identified the Arctic haze in the 50s. Aluminum particulates in the atmosphere, and they could not figure out where these were coming from. So all available data indicates that the geoengineering over the poles was going on at a significant scale since at least the late 40s. So
I have a snapshot of me and my brother in the high desert in about 1956, and there's 2 trails in it. I swear to God.
From 56.
1956, 57, mid to late 50s.
Okay.
Which I found, after watching this guy, I came across this old photo of this, and I was astounded. They weren't clouds, that's for sure.
No, you're exactly right. And
excuse me. I just have if I may offer a quick speculation, I'll let other callers come through. And this is pure speculation, but I wonder if this is also part of this is deliberate terraforming. And I'm just imagining, let's say the powers that be, they want to restructure the coastlines, they want to restructure the earth, they want to rehabilitate it with genetically engineered creatures and plant life. I just wonder if it's not deliberate terraforming.
Certainly, again, in regard to the genetic modification that's going on, there's no argument. There's a whole array of disaster capitalists that are trying to engineer organisms from trees to foods and so forth. But I would argue if we follow the whole chain of data from the inception of the climate engineering programs at a significant scale, it's fairly clear the course that got us to this place, and it's simply most related to an attempt to play God with the weather for the purposes of power and control, weather warfare, manipulation of crops, people, food supplies, so forth. But now I would argue this, that the power structure knows they have torpedoed the ship. They know that they have caused things that can't be stopped. They've released Pandora from the box, and the methane expulsion in the Arctic is a big part of that. And I want to read, in fact, this is an article from today from one of the most experienced Arctic scientists of all, Sam Crana from Arctic News. And this is from today. I'm going to read a direct quote off his article. There is a growing chance that the sea ice will collapse over the next few weeks. Not decades, not years, weeks. I'll go on. Due to heavy melting and storms speeding up the flow of sea ice around the Arctic Ocean where there is record warm temperatures. The ocean is absolutely superheating. So to relate this into what we talked about, the process of climate engineering, why they're doing it, it is terraforming, Rick. There's no way around that. And when you alter the biosphere, you're terraforming it. And whether you're cutting down forests or paving the planet, all those are forms of geoengineering or terraforming. But I would argue the power structure is now fraying apart. They're now very fearful. They're more dangerous than ever. They know they've done things they can't stop. They can't be turned off. If the public finds out about this, the public is going to seek out all those responsible.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I'm going to make room for other callers, but thank you, Dane, and thank you, Russ, and I'll keep spreading the word myself.
Thank you, Rick.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, Rick. Thanks for calling. We have another important call. We have another call from La Mirada, California. Welcome, California. Are you on with us?
Hi, Dane. Hi, you guys. I just want to let you know I'm in agreement with all you that climate engineering is real and it's happening. And I And I want to know how to measure the UV, if there's some way I can do it with, like, a bowl and water or something. I mean, you know, I'm going, do I have to go out? Because I can tell when I lift up the blinds. I mean, a room that I watch television in will go up 4 degrees if I lift up the blinds on the side window and stuff. And this is something that didn't used to happen. It's like they started hammering the city of La Mirada, which is, there's a Christian university here called Biola University. I'm going, they're hammering the Christians. They're probably spraying chemicals too. But this is
no one is exempt. I mean,
and I've been looking at a lot of stuff that's been going on. And I wanted to tell you, I don't know if Doug was able to tell you this, but there's a woman, she was on the 700 Club. Her name's Catherine Hayhoe, but it sounds like she works for NOAA, but she's also an associate professor for Texas Tech University, director of climate science. She was on the 700 Club July 16th, 2015, and she was talking about this event. And I'm going to read you a quote from the transcript. She said something like this: well, for the last 40 to 50 years or so, the sun's energy has been going down, solar dimming, while the Earth's temperature has been going up. And then it said, Hayhoe pointed out, so it can't be the sun, because if it was, we'd be getting cooler, not warmer. I thought she'd be a great person if you guys could get in touch with her, and she might wake up if you invite her to your conference.
We could use help with all those kind of contacts, and she's exactly right. This is where a lot of people are not looking at data. They're looking at a headline with no basis, and they've been told it's just the sun, the whole solar system is heating up. I
want to say something. She kind of sounds like she's leaning toward the David Keith information, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why she...
we need all the help we can get with reaching people like that. Yeah. I mean, there's so few of us in the front lines right now that, you know, any activist help we can get reaching out to people like that. And if once they're contacted and available, then, you know, we can talk to them directly. But we could certainly use all the help we can get reaching out to them. And again, this is where a lot of the headlines floating around, for example, the mini ice age headline that a lot of people saw, we now know that the researcher that article was based on never said anything that's meant to create that headline. There's no basis for that. Yes, the sun's in a calmer state, but the planet is warming at exponentially high rates right now. So it's nothing to do with a heating solar system or an active sun.
I can
You're
see
correct.
it in
Go
the
ahead.
trees around here too. I can see the leaves. They're like more golden. They do look burnt, and I'm going, I don't remember them ever looking like that. It's because they really did hammer. They're hammering this city. They've been hammering it since at least December of last year. Okay, 2014. Yeah, and it was Good Friday. On Mother's Day, I took a walk, and in the morning it was clear. I'm going, oh, they're not going to hammer us today. And in the afternoon, like 4 o'clock, I was telling everybody that was around my mom's house, hey, look at the sky. Look what they're doing. La, la, la. And I was telling people.
Well, listen, even on days...
You can go on.
Okay.
On that note, one article... I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
No, you first. No, that's all right. Finish up.
Okay. I wanted to give you this one article, and this article was written in 2000 in a publication called Wire. And I'm generally not the type of person who reads this, but it's a man named Bill Joy. And what was so interesting about this article to me in 2000, and this was before I knew about the HAARP or anything like that, is that he was talking about nanotechnology, and I said, oh, okay, I want to learn about that a little. But he was talking about other things, and it's called Why the Future Doesn't Need Us, and it's by Bill Joy. It's in April of 2000, Wire magazine. If you guys know how to do the internet and everything more than I do. I mean, I go to the library and use the internet, and I found out about geoengineering because of studying economics and all these people who advise millionaires and billionaires. They talked about the HAARP weapon and stuff. And Ellen Brown.
Well, if you can, on articles like that, if you find articles, what would help us, you can send that again to me at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. It makes it easier for us to find them. We can find them if we go to look, to put it in front of our face helps us, because I think we're all so busy. But you can send that to us there. And again, as far as your particular city of La Mirada being hammered, I don't doubt that they are. but a lot of places around the globe are being hit very hard. I know Russ has said, Russ, you've had quite consistent pounding there where you're at, correct?
Absolutely. It's been horrible here. They really are pounding us hard in Maine, yes.
So, again, I think there's nowhere to run. Some places seem to get it worse than others, but thank you for bringing that to our attention. And, again, any articles or any contacts that you mentioned, any help we can get with reaching out to people is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, that Hayho woman, I think she needs to be woken up.
Well, yeah, we could use the help in doing that. If you reach her, then we can give our contacts for a direct communication.
You guys can reach her faster than I can because I don't email her anything. But she has Twitter and Facebook and all this stuff, and whoever, I'm telling you, she'd be an interesting.
Just keep in mind, there's a lot of contacts. There's a lot of contacts out there, though. There's a lot of contacts out there, though, that I get probably 20 messages a day from people that want me to contact different people, and I wish I could. It would help if we had help. If we had help reaching out to these people from activists, even if you can't, maybe you know someone that's online that could help, because we need all the help we can get starting spot fires, because we're simply spread too thin. I'm putting in 15, 16 hours a day, and it's not enough right now. And so we could use all the help we can get in that regard. But thanks for helping us sound the alarm, and we'll grab a few more calls, and let's all keep pulling.
Dane, we have a call from Michael from Canada.
Good. Thanks, Doug.
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, Michael. How are you?
Hey, Dane. Tired, and but getting there in terms of that I did it, Dane. I got my meeting with the local Green Party MLA candidate.
How'd that go?
It went pretty good, I would say. Mostly good, yeah. I talked to him for 2 hours, shared lots of information. He was only semi-aware of the geoengineering issue, and he asked me if this was about the chemtrails thing. So I explained to him the importance of the science terms and informed him on all the science data that I've learned from you and your work, so he knows what's up now. He's on our side and wants to help, but I didn't take into account that he's still just a candidate, and he doesn't hold any office yet, so he doesn't have any influence to help sound the alarm about this. He explained to me his views that if he started going on about this and other major issues, then the corporate media paints him as a loony, and then he's done without getting any good done. So right now he's trying to focus on getting elected because he tells me that he's not an activist like you or me, but he wants to be the guy that listens to the activists and gets stuff done about it. And he wants to get in contact with you and said to me in an email that he's for the need for unfettered scientific research and media coverage for not just this, but plenty of all the major issues going on.
Michael, just your opinion of, and then I want Russ and Doug's opinion, but does it strike you as profound that someone representing the Green Party would really have no idea about the greatest environmental threat of all?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about that is, well, there's a lot that can go into the background and information about this everything related to this. But this guy was, like I said, he's never an activist and still isn't one, and he was just a fishery guy that wanted to get back to the community. And like a year ago, just read the Green Party platform and realized that that platform actually makes a lot of sense and could do some good for the country. So he decided he wanted to try and make a change by becoming a candidate for the MLA for the party. So he just, like I said, a year ago, he was coordinated.
I'm not singling him out or picking on him. I don't mean to do that. The entire quote-unquote environmentalist community, as I've stated many times, are the most difficult to reach with this reality. Absolutely the most difficult. It's astounding. They simply don't want to face it. I mean, long-term environmentalists that adamantly deny this issue, and it's certainly perplexing, and it's very hypocritical that they take this position. It's astounding. But on the notion that and so many people have that position, they want to be quiet about it until they get elected. At the point in time they get elected, there's other pressures on them that keep them from speaking out. So we end up with everybody pretending the ship is not sinking while they're neck deep in water. And that's really the scenario that we have. And I think it's important you met with him, and it's important for us to follow through. I'm not trying to downplay that at all. It is important. But let's hope that other activists do what you're doing to reach out, spending the time to actually contact these people, because, again, just a few of us can't do it. We need people like you, Michael, doing what you're doing and helping us to make these contacts, because We need more people in the battle, quite simply. So I hope that you stay on him and keep rattling his cage and make him understand. And this is what most people don't understand. Even people in this fight don't understand. Our horizon is extremely immediate. Those people who are still thinking in terms of what they're going to do in 15 or 20 years when they get this issue fixed and what their retirement's going to be like and all this sort of stuff we're fed on the TV, all the commercials that talk about managing our interests or our retirement accounts, it's all smoke and mirrors. None of it matters. When the biosphere doesn't support life, none of that matters. And I hope that point starts to sink in with people. We either fix this problem now or we face certain extinction. And even if we fix this, we have a mountain of challenges ahead of us, one step at a time, because there's countless forms of anthropogenic damage that have slaughtered the planet, absolutely slaughtered it. But this is the biggest hole in the boat of all. So anyway, thank you for what you're doing, Michael, and I hope others take note of that. And Russ and Doug, if you guys can both chime in real quick, does it not to pick on this Canadian Green Party candidate at all, but just in general, the environmentalist community, Russ and then Doug, does it strike you as extremely hypocritical that we have the anti-global warming community and the environmentalist community that are really completely sitting out this fight and denying it?
Yeah, years ago, Dane, I would have considered it strange and hypocritical. But then I learned about what I want other people to understand, Americans and people in Europe who really understand how the governments work. Controlled opposition, controlled regulation, social counterbalances. What are these? These are organizations that you set up because when they're going to spray, when you're going to have a global operation this huge and you're going to have it in the wide open stretches of the sky, you're going to have information cover. You're going to have these environmental organizations completely controlled. If they're not controlled, they will speak out. If these were real people who really cared about the environment, they would be outraged about what's going on. But these are controlled people, controlled opposition. And that's what I believe we have going on here, Dane. The people who are committing this crime against humanity planned for it long in advance, knew that they had to have all their ducks in a row and had to have full control over all of their opposition. It's like Rockefeller once said, if you want to win a contest, you have to control both sides. Doug?
That's exactly what's going on. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, to me, you have the Green Party, you have Greenpeace, you have other green organizations, and when you think green, the normal person is going to think environmental and ecological, but actually they're political parties, and green actually means money, and that's what it comes down to. Green is money. And so I usually just kind of bring it back around to political parties. They're all about the money and the funds coming in and the donations primarily. And if you can find a politician that's actually that actually cares about this particular issue, if they're brave enough to talk about it, then the goal is to get them to understand it so that they will speak out about it, because they do have the power to bring large amounts of awareness to a big group of people. So that's the best thing to me about getting politicians involved.
Well, those that aren't bought, sold, and paid for, but I've yet to find one that isn't. In regards to the controlled opposition, like Russ said, yeah, when we have McGibbon from 350.org, supposedly an environmentalist, who's getting money from the Rockefeller Foundation, exactly what Russ said, paid opposition. When we have also the sort of conditioning, again, back to the Iran situation, the conditioning of the U.S. population, why would the U.S. population, when they know what their government has done to them, and we've had several dozen biological tests on U.S. populations, on U.S. soil, done by our military, it's historical fact, when we know the degree the government has lied, and even those people, and I know some of these people who know that the government is spraying us, yet they still believe the government propaganda in regards to Iran being a threat. How could a person who knows their own government is spraying them without their knowledge or consent then turn around and believe something else from this same government? Does that seem a little astounding? It does to me. So, again, I hope people actually and this is difficult. I don't want to make it sound easy. It's very difficult to overcome your programming for all of us. We can think we have, but in reality, we still haven't. But I hope everybody struggles to do this, to clean the slate of preconception, of bias, and to look at actual information. When you see a headline, investigate that headline from some other source, from the front lines, so that you can see if there's any validity to it. When our government says Iran's a threat, and you investigate and find out that, in fact, there's really nothing to back that up, that Iran's going to threaten us here, just like Saddam was a threat, and just like Al-Qaeda was a threat to us here. And right now we have a government that's literally a runaway juggernaut of criminal insanity. American population doesn't wake up soon, it's going to be game over. Guys, looks like we got, I don't know, Doug, we got any more online right now?
Yeah, I think Doug's in the other room. I think we need to announce the call-in number for anyone who'd like to call in.
Okay.
The number is 929-477-2297. That's 929-477-2297. And Dane, I can't express enough how much that I see a correlation between my ability to detect this stuff in the air to how people act, how people feel, how their health is modulated by the intensity of this stuff in the air. If you were to walk into a dirty factory that was contaminated with aluminum or barium or strontium or toluene or glyphosate or something, and you had chronic exposure to this, you would get to the point where when you had exposure for 10, 15, 20 minutes, you'd get a headache, you'd feel lethargic, your joints and muscles might hurt, and that's exactly what we're seeing on the ground. And we're being exposed 24/7 to this stuff right now.
It is, and again, back to, I know groups of people and organizations that know this is going on, but are still not behaving in a manner that would indicate that they understand the gravity of this issue, that whatever else they're working on, whatever other challenges they want to address or goals they want to try to accomplish, if your head's on fire, you have to stop worrying about your stub toe, if you will. You have to deal with the biggest emergency, and this is certainly that emergency. And I hope that the gravity of this issue, again, I can only hope that it sinks in and that people start to behave accordingly, that they start to make this the priority that it obviously must be. And back to the event in Redding, California, let me get this right this time, on August 14th, on an interview with Greg Hunter from USA Watchdog, I, for some reason, had a different date stuck in my mind, and I apologize for that. But anyway, August 14th, I think we're going to have a very, very attended event, and we've added another expert to that event. We have a North State, very prominent neurologist named Hamid Rabi. I'm extremely honored to call this man my friend. He's Iranian, and it's interesting to me the amount of courage he shows in spite of a community that can be biased, and in spite of his roots. He's willing to speak out on this issue. He's willing to say his patients are increasingly showing cognitive dysfunction because they're full of toxic heavy metals, because they're sucking them in with every breath. He's not afraid. He has the courage to speak out. So I hope more rise to the example set by Dr. Hamid, who is, again, an extremely honorable individual, and I'm honored to add him to the roster. He will be speaking out on August 14th at the Reading event. So we do have our DVDs in for that event now. The last big event that we organized in Northern California, November of last year, we had a pallet of 2,000 commercial DVDs that disappeared and never showed up. This is from UPS. And those DVDs, this is a 5-foot by 5-foot by 5-foot pallet that weighs 500 pounds. Commercial DVDs in the full plastic case, shrink wrap. This is a huge shipment. UPS didn't even seem to want to find that. They simply said, file your claim. We'll pay the claim. How do you lose something that big? And the DVD company, who shipped millions of DVDs, said they've never had this happen, ever. So I ordered early this time to make sure I would have enough, and we've gotten our shipment in, so we're okay this time. But we never recovered the other 2,000. They just disappeared somewhere into the black hole. So anyway, we're preparing for this event. I hope anybody that's near enough to come does. It's imperative that people show up. It's imperative for people to get off the bench and not think someone else is moving the ball up the field. All of us have to. Correct, Russ?
Absolutely, and this is exactly the problem we have. I believe, Dane, if we had 10% of the people who knew about this telling 2 people a day, Dane, we would have solved this problem years ago. It is up to you who are listening right now. You who are listening, you tell your friends, you tell your family. It's not going to happen by osmosis. It's not going to happen automatically, and this problem is not going to go away by itself. You have to do something, every one of us. So please get involved before any more damage occurs.
You have to. And this is where, again, I'm sure Russ receives these emails like I'm about to describe. I get emails from people who are sending me instructions of all the things that I need to do, and I can't do any more than I'm doing. I'm trying. I'm working 7 days a week, as many hours in the day as I can, and all of us need to help advance the ball again. And when you're communicating this issue to, for example, meteorologists or agency people or elected officials, it's important to try to do that in writing with an email so that you have a record of it. And it's important to point out to them in a non-threatening manner, but just a matter-of-fact manner, that the public is waking up to this issue. That once the public is fully awake in this issue, that they will be, no doubt, furious with all those who have helped to hide this issue. And I know this from our local elected congressman here in Northern California, Congressman Doug LaMalfa. His staff, at one point in time, actually would call me at home on the weekend complaining about the climate engineering issue. Then whatever happened, and I was told at several points in time that they were getting some calls or some pushback from Sacramento or from up the ladder somewhere. They went from calling me at home on the weekend to complain about this issue, this is Congressman Doug LaMalfa's staff, to actually showing up at the last event I had in Northern California. One of the staff, I don't know if she was on her own time or if she was on the congressman's time, but she showed up at an event on a Friday night, didn't say anything publicly, didn't challenge any of the facts publicly in an open forum where there was a question of an answer period where she could have done that. But she chose to stand at the door where people were leaving the event to tell them that Dane's lying. What kind of behavior is that for a congressional aide? This staff has refused any public addressing of this issue, that the offer of a public of debate of facts. Their office refused testing data supplied by the state-certified lab. They denied the validity of that. They denied the validity of test data offered by California EPA. They simply hid at the door and in a cowardly fashion, tried to tell people that I was lying, that this wasn't true. Well, that's what we have for elected officials. That's what we have. And for those type of people, it's important, if you're communicating with them and trying to tell them, share this issue, that you do it in writing and make sure that they know, or that it's pointed out to them in writing, that the public will certainly hold them responsible, legally responsible, in what hopefully amounts to Nuremberg-type trials that deliver legal justice to all those that have participated in a crime of not just genocide or ecocide, but omnicide, the killing of all life. So,
and Dane, to back you up on that, are people interested in this? Is this an issue? Dane, tell them we have a Facebook group. 35,406 people in this Facebook group. There are 740 people waiting to get in. We cannot vet them quick enough to let them into our group. Other groups have 5, 10, 11, 12,000 people waiting in these groups dealing with this specific issue. So
we do, and the wake-up is occurring rapidly.
Sleeping giant. Yeah, this is the sleeping giant issue. Yes.
And this is, again, imperative people understand that on this particular issue, once we bring this to light, once we can break the dam of silence and secrecy on this elephant in the room that's so incredibly destructive and obvious, there will be a shockwave of unimaginable proportion around the globe against all governments that have participated in this without the knowledge and consent of their population. And though governments are doing this under the guise of national security, that there is a global climate emergency, which is true. There's no question about that. The climate is literally imploding. It's disintegrating. But climate engineering is helping to fuel that fire. It's not mitigating it. And these programs have been used for the purposes of power and control, period. They're crimes against all life on Earth, period. And everyone needs to treat this issue with that sort of urgency. All of us need to grab the tether and pull. And again, do it effectively. Learn to do it effectively. Use the science terms. And a lot of people who claim to be fighting this same battle are still insisting on using terms that just marginalize our cause. Terms that the congressional reps will take out a sheet of paper from the government, the boilerplate paper that says chemtrails are a hoax. End of story. Don't give them such an easy out. I realize chemtrails is a more descriptive term. I realize that. But it's not a term that's helping us. We're playing chess. If you're going to play chess and you're going to have any chance at prevailing, you need to understand how the game works. So let's play in a manner that allows us the chance to prevail, to not be marginalized, to beat them at their own game, if you will. And using the science terms is a leap in that direction. Russ, have you ever seen the NASA sheet, 4 pages long, boilerplate? It's the standard handout for any congressional office that says chemtrails is a hoax. End of story.
Yeah,
that sheet?
And yeah. Isn't it just makes your blood boil? They're lying about this. Absolutely lying.
Everybody's lying. We have a system that's absolutely full of cowards. And I'm sorry, there's no other term for it. And people who claim that, well, my job depends on it, my security. What good is your security going to do when the planet doesn't support life? What good is that piece of paper that says you just earned X amount of money this week? What good will that do you? Can you eat that piece of paper? You can't. And those that think they're going to guard against what's coming by buying heavy metals or so forth, it's not going to matter if you don't have food to eat. So the bottom line is, our priority should be to save the planet's ability to support life on Earth. We don't do that, nothing else matters. Doug, any final comments before we're off the air? I'm not sure if we had Doug with us.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would just say that, bring the people around you into this as much as you can, and you may have to bring them in through learning about the fraud that vaccines are, complete and total fraud. Bring them in that way. Bring them in by learning about fluoride. Bring them in by learning about GMOs, because it's all connected, and it's important for people to understand that the goal here is not only to dumb us down, but to eventually kill us. And hopefully people will be able to grasp onto one of those issues and then be brought into the geoengineering issue, because it's all tied together.
Absolutely.
Well, even
this is GeoEngineering Watch. This is GeoEngineering Watch Radio. That's okay. We're at the end of the show. We'll be here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week. Please join us on Blog Talk Radio.